there booktube, it's Eleanor here, and this is the start of my next drag queen's journey. So I'm going to be doing this one a little bit differently because I have actually picked all the different prompts for this particular drag queen, and then I'm going to be reading those books and catching you up on them. So if you haven't seen my announcement or my first drag queen journey, then you can see those. I'll link them up above. But my next drag queen to go through the process I've picked out is Bob the drag queen, the activist queen, and the prompt for this is a non-fiction book from my Black Lives Matter TBR. I made a TBR of books that I wanted to read, which is steadily increasing and will continue to increase, but I was also reading this book for the BookTube prize, and so I decided I was going to use Solitary by Albert Woodfox for that. This is a non-fiction book and it's about Albert's time in jail. Albert was in jail, well, this book starts in the 60s. Albert was in jail for numerous years, I think 40 or 50 years, more than 4 decades, and he spent the majority of that time in solitary confinement in a small cell, mainly because he was seen as a troublemaker. Now, not for the ways that we might think. He was trying to find ways to find a way to keep his sanity in prison, and so he learned the teachings of the Black Panther Party while he was in there, and they are just about solidarity, sticking together, working as a team, and he wanted to petition for better living conditions for solitary confinement. He said it was, you know, it was unfair on prisoners, and as new prisoners came in, he stopped prisoners on his levels getting raped. And in terms of fighting for things, he formed things like his area of the prison. They would all join together, and they would, anybody that got money that came in from friends or family members, they joined it together, so that, and each week everybody on the whole row got, you know, something to eat or something that they needed. So it was sort of created this more level playing field for everyone, and this sort of sense of solidarity. If they went on hunger strike, they all went on hunger strike, no matter who it was that the reason was happening for. It was petitioning for better living conditions, educating himself, and putting in petitions for his own sort of right to freedom. And while he was in prison, him and 2 other men were accused of killing a prison guard, and it has been, well, in the book, you know, there was just so much that they just tried to pin on him that was just, I mean, I find it very difficult to read about all the injustices that happened to him throughout the whole of this, and the things that were made up, coerced, bribed out of people, conveniently disappeared. It was just thing upon thing upon thing. And I think for me, the reason I couldn't give this 5 stars was because it's very dense. And I think, you know, there is a reason behind that, but there is a lot of the legal system and going through everything that's happened to him, and I think that is really important. But obviously, not living in America, not knowing any of that sort of system at all, I found it very difficult to keep on top of, and there was a lot to take in, and there was just, I think, you know, it just added up and up and up what they had to go through just to get themselves heard. And it's not like you could just put a petition in for something and then it came back even like the next week. Sometimes it would be months or years, and, you know, being confined to a cell for 23 hours a day, especially when you suffer from claustrophobia, it's just a testament to his strength of character, really, that these 3 men managed to survive for so long. And unfortunately, one of the men was pardoned and died only a few days later because he had the final stages of cancer. And Albert is now, you know, even though he's out, he's still, you know, fighting for justice. And it's mainly set around Angola prison. And again, I don't know much about sort of American prisons and their sort of history, and I learned some of it in this. It talks about it, but I just found it incredibly claustrophobic to read and soul destroying, and a very important and impactful book. So 4 stars for this one for sure. And yes, so Bob has his first 4 stars. Let's see how he gets on with the other challenges. Okay, so for the challenge for Bob, it was ball. Put in the work, learn something new. And so for this, I wanted to pick up my copy of March, which is a collection of volumes 1, 2 and 3 of March, the graphic novel by John Lewis, Andrew Aiden and Nate Powell. I've heard about this for quite a number of years, and it's something that I've wanted to read. I do really like graphic novel non-fiction. I just think it really helps to sort of hit home sometimes what can be lost in a denser novel. And I think the only reason I hadn't picked this up is I do tend to veer towards graphic novels which have more colour, and this one is in black and white. I like this because I felt like it really provided me with a better understanding of the civil rights movement. I think we're often taught about Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and those people that went more viral with their big statements. But what about all the people who worked for years and protested peacefully and were met with violence, hatred and resistance from regular people, political figures and police, and still they remained strong and dedicated to their cause, which even now has not been completed? I found it thought-provoking, anger-inducing and scary how much power some have over the masses and how the abuse of that power is often overlooked and ignored. I definitely am really pleased that I picked this one up. I just, it really opened my eyes. I think very ignorantly and naively because, you know, I don't study American history in schools in England. You get the occasional bit about different people. I don't know much about the American political system and sort of voting in America and how that works in terms of states and things like that. And so this did help me to sort of understand a bit more how, you know, just a black person trying to sign up so that they could vote. They had the right to vote and they would not let them sign the papers to be able to complete a ballot to vote. They were given tests and they were kept waiting, and if they did manage to sign up, they had their houses shot at and people were killed, and they were in fear of voting. And I just, you know, that's something that I didn't know about, and something that I should have known about, and I think this definitely opened my eyes to a lot more things. You know, we hear about things like Rosa Parks, you know, who took a stand on the buses during segregation, and for some reason, you know, ignorantly, I've thought, oh well, you know, that made such a stand, it made all the difference and everything was okay after that, and that's not the case at all. There was so much effort and protesting and fighting, you know, fighting for justice, not fisticuff fighting, and the amount of stuff that happened to these people that were merely protesting the rights that they should have had already, I found heartbreaking. I also really liked how at the start of this book we're in the present day, or not the present day, but it starts with President Obama's, is it called an inauguration? I think it's when he became president, and Congressman John Lewis was there with Obama, and then it starts to go back in time and we follow him from his childhood and all the way up to sort of the present day, which I thought was really good. So I really liked this, and I ended up giving it 4 stars. Each of the different volumes were all 4 stars. It wasn't quite 5 stars because I think I like something a bit more in colour. I tend to lose my focus a little bit when there's not sort of colour pulling me through. Even if there'd been like a highlighted colour through, I would have liked that. And in some cases there was quite a lot to take in on one page, and I found it quite overwhelming. But I'm so pleased I have this on my shelf. It's one that I will definitely be pushing into Matilda's hands as she gets older. So 4 stars for this. Okay, so I have just finished my first book for the prompt category is, and this time the category was double trouble, and so it was to read a duology and to read both books. So I've read the first one in my duology, I've got to read the second one, and then I'm going to average out the Goodreads rating to find out what rating I'm giving. So I picked up What Sunny Saw in the Flames by Nnedi Okorafor. This is actually the same as A Cat, a Witch, but over in the UK for some reason we had a copy called What Sunny Saw in the Flames, so that's that. And I've just finished this one and I'm going to give it 4 stars. It was one of those books that sort of unravelled slowly for me. I think at the beginning I struggled because, as with all sort of fantastical worlds and things with magic, we have to learn about the magic, we have to learn about how it all works. And what I quite liked with this is that Sunny is learning along with us. And so Sunny is discovering who she is, discovering she's part of these leopard people, which is people with magical abilities, and she doesn't know anything about it, and so she's learning as she goes on, and so are we as well along with her. There was a few bits in here that I struggled with. I found the ending a little bit too fast. I also found that what happened at the end just felt a little bit too easy. So I will see how we get on with A Cat, a Warrior, but that's the reason I didn't give it more than that. I loved the setting in Nigeria. I loved this idea about the leopard people. I loved this idea about bias against people from different countries, like American Nigerians. Sunny, our main character, is an albino, and so there is definitely a prejudice against her. She gets bullied at school. And so there's lots of things sort of coming into play here, and I just think I want to see where the next stage takes us, to see whether it starts to all click together even more. But it was a strong 4 stars, so I'll come back to you when I've read A Cat, a Warrior, and we'll see what my average is. Okay, so I've just finished A Cat, a Warrior, and after finishing this I have now realised that this is not a duology and there is going to be more in the series. However, I thought it was a duology, I read it as a duology, and after reading this second one I wasn't quite as interested in the story, so I don't think I'll be carrying on with the series anyway. So for all intents and purposes, for me, this is a duology, but there is going to be more in the series. I ended up giving this one 3 stars, and it was good. I just felt like it was quite long, and I felt at times the pacing was quite off and it just felt a bit slow. And there's so much stuff in here that's new and weird and strange, and I felt like sometimes it just bombarded me a bit too much, and I didn't feel like there was enough explanation about certain things, and I felt like some of the characters were doing things that I didn't really understand their motivation for. I love the idea of this story. I love the original story. The first story I thought was really strong, and I just felt this one just lacked something for me. There was parts of it I really loved, and there was parts of it I wasn't so excited about, and so that is unfortunate. So that is that duology. So for that I gave a 4 and a 3. So the plan was to add them together and then average it. So if I add them together it's 7, if I average it it's 3.5, but I think that the 3 was probably closer to a 3.5, so I'm going to round it up to 4 and be very kind to Bob. So for that I'm going to give a 4. Okay, so I finished my next book, and that is for my judge's pick, which was Michelle Visage, and her pick is to read a book about friendship. Now I got this in my Once Upon a Book Club box this month, and it's called Buy the Book by Amanda Sellett. It's a book I hadn't heard of at all, but when I read the blurb it suggested that it was about making friends, learning about friendship, and sort of there was a romance in there as well, but it sounded like it was quite heavy on friendship, so I decided that this is the one I was going to pick up. I'm trying to stay on top of my subscription box reading, and I really love this subscription box. If you haven't seen my videos I'll link one up above, but it's a box that comes, and inside is some post-it notes on certain pages, and there are little prizes and presents for you to open along the way that correspond to what's being talked about in the book. I got some really good gifts in this box. I won't show them here in case any of you have the box and don't want to be spoiled. But I was so pleasantly surprised by this book. Often if I'm set a book I haven't heard of, I go into it with a bit of trepidation, because generally on BookTube we tend to sort of hear about those books that are the ones to sort of watch out for and the really good ones. I've not heard anyone talk about this and I really loved it. It was really quite funny, not laugh out loud guffawing, but really quite funny in its uncomfortableness really. The story is about our main character Mary, and she's always gone to this tiny little school which is at her parents' university. They're both professors, English professors I believe, and she's gone to this university school where there's maybe 30 kids in the whole school, and it's all very insular, and they've sort of decided on what they're learning themselves, and you know, they're all very intelligent, but they've sort of led themselves really, and they haven't really socialised in sort of a bigger sense in like a big school. This school gets shut down at the beginning of her sophomore year, and so she has to go to a regular regular school, and her older sister goes there. They're a family of 7, so she's got 3 older sisters, a pair of twins, and then the next down is Cam, who's at the same school as her and is a high schooler. I think she's 18 and really into sports, and then she's got a younger brother who's not quite at school, you know, big school yet, called Jasper, and she's quite uncomfortable in social situations. She knows loads about books, she spouts things about classics, she can talk about that, but she doesn't really have those sort of social nuances and understanding of what to say in social situations. And when she starts her new school, the only girl that she knows from the old school shuns her and sort of pushes her away, and she really does feel quite lost. And then all of a sudden there's this sort of chance encounter with these 3 girls who she sort of sees as really popular, and she sort of manages to insert herself into a friendship with them, and it just follows this friendship blossoming and building, and it's really funny. The you know, the way she manages to get herself in this friendship is that she tells them, and this isn't really a spoiler, it comes right at the beginning, is that she sort of compares a particular boy that they're gossiping about to Vronsky from Anna Karenina, and this sort of spurns this sort of look into different boy types and who's good and who fits in with these sort of dangerous tropes from classics, these sort of scoundrels, and so she's sort of helping them build up this idea of what a good you know, man should look like from all of her classics reading, and they are taking her on what they call Mary's season, which is like her first year at normal school, so she has to sort of do all of the things that a debutante would do, but sort of for them. So like attend her first party, go to the school dance, find someone to kiss, you know, go to the shopping centre, all those different things that are sort of rites of passage at school. And this just wonderful friendship blossoms, and then there's obviously a romantic element to this. Someone who she has perhaps thought shouldn't be a potential suitor maybe is, and that's really sweet and lovely in how that comes about. Some really good plus points about this. At the beginning of every chapter there's this small diary entry which I really appreciated. There is so much talk of classics and different books, and what I love as well is at the end the author did a little section called the Scoundrel Survival Guide, and in it there is all the different books that were talked about, so if you fancied going back and reading any of them, which some of these I might because there were a few in there that I hadn't heard of, then that's a possibility and something that you can do. And so I really loved that sort of tie-in with books as well, and I really loved the family dynamic in there. The family and the relationship between the family is really strong and really lovely. There is a hilarious moment when she comes home and she's really upset. I'll see if I can find it because it was so funny. Yeah, so it's here, and her mum says, "First of all," she says, pressing my limp hand between both of hers, "there's nothing to be ashamed of." I give a sputter of disbelief. "The early stirrings of love can be confusing, particularly in their physical manifestations, but as long as both partners share a mutual respect and consideration..." She trailed off, jaw tightening. "It was, wasn't it?" She'd lost me. "What?" "A joint decision." She enunciated the words carefully, watching my face. "You didn't feel compelled or coerced to do anything you weren't ready for." I stared back at her with mounting dread. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about whether you want to talk, whatever you want to talk about, in the spirit of openness and acceptance." "I kissed him, Mum. That's it." Oh, thank God. She covered her eyes with one hand. You're much too young. I was trying to be broad-minded, but I don't think either of us is ready for that. Leaning forward, she yelled, you can come back in now. It's not about sex. I closed my eyes as the last words reverberated through the house. Dad stuck his head through the doorway. It's not. Just a kiss, Mum assured him. I just thought that was really hilarious, this sort of, this mum trying to sort of broach this conversation of sex with her, and she'd sort of sent the dad out of the room. And there's just some lovely little bits in there like that. I love the sibling relationships, they're really strong. And I love this friendship that builds up, and this sort of proper friendship that builds up between the girls, and what Mary sort of perceives as perhaps her forcing her way into this friendship, and her only value being bringing this sort of idea about boys, ends up being much more than that. And it's her realising that she has more to offer, and what true friendship looks like. And I really love this. I gave it a really strong 4 stars. And yes, so Bob the Drag Queen's doing quite well. 4 stars for this one. Okay, so I've now read all of the different books for the different categories up to this far. I've given 4 4-star reads, which means I've got 16, but that's not enough to take us straight through to the next round. We needed 17. However, it has made me realise from this sort of first 2 rounds that I think I'm going to lower the score you then need to get to for the lip sync. So you still need to get 17 to straight away stay in the first 4 rounds. But if you get to the lip sync battle, which is what I'm doing now, before I was saying I think it was 21 points you had to get to go through, and I just think that's unrealistic. So I'm going to set that at 19. So it doesn't make a difference to my last round because I ended up with 17 overall anyway. So I'm going to see, I'm going to move it down to 19 because I think that's easier, and it also means that I'm not tempted to bump up my scores to try and sort of get certain drag queens to stay. I don't want this to affect my ratings and make me rate things unfairly. So I'm going to move it to 19, and I think that should work. So I have to get a 17 in the first 4 rounds to get straight through, and then if I don't, I have to go to the lip sync, which I'm going to put on my lip sync card now, and after the lip sync I have to have got 19 points. So I'm currently on 16, so that means that if I give a 3 or above I will be staying. So we'll see. That's, you know, quite good odds really for Bob. So I'm just mixing these up without looking. I'm staring at the camera, and I'm going to pick this one. 1999 Prince. Book written or set before 1999. Okay, I will find one and I'll come back to you and let you know which one I read. Okay, so I've just finished my book for the lip sync battle, which was a book that was written or set before 1999, and I picked The Henna Artist by Alka Joshi. This is a book that's recently made it onto my bookshelf, so I was really pleased that I could pick it up. It wasn't written before 1999, but it's set in the 1950s, so it fulfills the prompt in that way, and I really enjoyed this. It did give me some sort of feelings of Sari. I just think books set in India, books set in Sri Lanka, books set in that part of the world really sort of calling to me at the moment. This is about a number of sort of cast of characters really, but our main character Lakshmi has left her husband 13 years previous and gone to a big town where she has become a henna artist, and we slowly uncover how that's all come about throughout the story, so I don't want to say too much more than that. But really this story starts when she is she's quite established as a henna artist, and she's looking at sort of other avenues to make money because she wants to own her own house. She's been married to a man that she was married off to very young, and he wasn't very kind to her, and so she's run away from him. And now she is approached by her sister she didn't know she had, whose the parents have died, and the sister has discovered that she had an older sister, and now the older sister realises she had a younger sister, and then we're sort of following what happens when these sisters get together, and it is looking at status and hierarchy and how people are treated, and herbal medicines and herbal remedies and henna and society and the things that society sort of allows to go on if you've got enough money or status, which I thought was really interesting. I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really good. It had a really nice feel all the way through. It read really nicely. You really got yourself sort of drawn into the different characters. And yeah, I'm going to give it a 4 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star for me, but it was a really good 4 stars, and I'm really pleased I read it. So that takes Bob up to 20 points, which means that Bob, you get to Shantae, you stay. So Bob is getting to stay for round 2. So Bob will go into a separate pile now, which will await for me to go through all the other drag queens before we move on to sort of season 2 really, which will be the next stage where I may have new challenges and things. So far this is the end of episode 2. We have 1 drag queen who has left, and we have now Bob who is made it to the next round. So keep your eyes peeled for the next video where I will be picking my next drag queen and working my way through the challenges to see if they sashay away or Shantae stay. Anyway, that's it from me, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Bye for now, BookTube.